Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Mr. Douglas Sports Show. I am your host back with you, Corey Douglas, and a lot happened since the last time I came to you guys with a video or a show. Obviously, we had some treacherous weather out there in Texas last week, and I mean, we could talk about snow, we talk about ice, and it shut down pretty much the entire state. People losing electricity, people losing water. I was one of the fortunate ones that did not lose power or water during this time, so I'm thankful for that. But my heart goes out to all the ones that were affected in that way and are still actually recovering it even a week later. But I have a lot to get to on this show. Like I mentioned, there's a lot to get to. A lot happened within these last 2 weeks. You talk about NFL news with Carson Wentz being traded to Indy, which we knew that was kind of happening back then. You have Cam Newton getting heckled by a kid at his own camp. We'll get to that. But I want to start today's episode off with some basketball talk. I know I haven't really taught much basketball. I was fully invested in the NFL season. Of course, that has come and gone, but there will still be some NFL talk as we head to free agency and then head to the draft. But yeah, I want to talk some Mavs basketball. Right now, the Mavs currently sit at 15-15. So with the Mavs coming into this season, I was really optimistic about them. I thought with Luka and KP coming out the way they played in the bubble, I thought they would be able to jump to the number 3 seed and host a home court playoff series and hopefully win that playoff series for the first time since 2011. But when the schedule came out, it was tough because they started with a 3-game road trip to Phoenix, the Lakers, and then they played the Clippers. They went 1-2 in that stretch with a 51-point win mixed in there against the Clippers. And the big emphasis for the Mavs coming into the season was they needed to improve on defense. So they traded Seth Curry, which was a great shooter. They traded for Josh Richardson, which was thought of as an elite defender, and he'd be able to come in here and still provide enough offense, but the impact that he would have on defense would offset maybe what he's lacking on offense, which it really started looking that way. You know, even though they were losing games early, they were playing solid defense. And after starting out the season 1-3, they went on and went 5-6 to get to the record of 6-4, including a huge road win against a really tough opponent in Denver. But then that's when the next kind of phase of the Mavs season turned. They lost 5 role players due to COVID protocols. A couple of them even had COVID. When you talk about Dorian Finney-Smith, you talk about Maxi Kleber. They lost Josh Richardson. They lost Dwight Powell. And they also lost Jalen Brunson for a couple games in that stretch. So they really struggled. They lost 9 of their next 11 games and dropped to 5 games under 500. And during that stretch, it included 2 just awful losses to the Utah Jazz. Of course, we know the Utah Jazz are the number 1 seed in the West right now, so there's no problem with that necessarily. But they were getting stomped in those 2 games in the back-to-back against Utah, and that caused Luka to come out and call out a couple of his teammates. Not directly or you know, he didn't throw out any names, but overall he said the team needs to play with more effort. And also during that stretch, you had KP Porzingis, who has been struggling since coming back from his offseason knee surgery. He's missed a bunch of games, but even during that stretch, he was talking about how he wasn't really happy with the rotations and the minutes he was playing. He felt like he couldn't get into a rhythm. But then the Mavs now have won 6 of 8. They look like they're kind of getting out of the COVID slump. Of course, they had 2 games canceled last week during the whole weather fiasco here in Texas. So they had 8 days off to really actually practice. They've only had a full squad practice 3 times this season before that stretch. So now it feels like maybe the tide is turning. They're up to the number 9 seed right now. They're a game and a half behind Golden State, who it currently holds an 18-15 record with the 8th seed. But overall, I haven't really got a good feeling on this Mavs team. But I will say, like, to this point, I don't see a Mavs team that I thought was coming into the season. I don't think they're as good. I don't think they'll be able to get up to a 3 or 4 seed in the Western Conference to host that home playoff series. And there's basically 3 main ingredients as far as why I feel that way. Number 1, it has to be the lack of ability to rely on KP being healthy and being available to help this team. Coming into the season, I knew that there was going to be a lot of pressure on Luka to continue to perform. He came in out of shape, but he's slowly worked his way back, and now he's in full MVP mode. In the month of February, he's averaging 31, 10, and 8 for the month. So he's picked it up. He's shooting 48% from 3 his last 8 games. So he's really carrying the squad. But in order for the Mavs to be a team that really competes for a Western Conference title or even an NBA championship, they have to have a second star in here that's going to be able to kind of take some of the pressure off of Luka. And to this point, KP has not proved to be that way. And we're going to get a little bit into KP here in just a second. But the number 2 thing is, I think the Mavs front office has once again let down the star of their franchise. Since they won the championship in 2011, Mark Cuban has built a team that is strictly based off hope. You know, he's freeing up cap space for a hope and a dream that a superstar comes to join his franchise. He did it with the last years of Dirk. It didn't work. And then now he's doing it with the early years of Luka. And the thing that really concerns me with that aspect is I don't see Luka sticking around and going through the down years that Dirk had to go through at the end of his career. I think the only reason Dirk did that is because they were continually trying pieces around him before they got the championship, and then ultimately he got to that championship, and then the back half of his career, it was just about the love of the game of basketball, and he had got so much involved in the city of Dallas, and because he had the championship, it was cool with him. But Luka, he's a young guy. He's a flashy guy. He played for Real Madrid. And he's a guy, and the way I look at it is this guy is going to win championships in his career. I don't know how many championships, whether it's going to be 1 or 4 or 5, I don't know. But he's going to win some. And if Dallas and Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson don't get a squad together, Luka will not be here the entire period of his career. The Mavs front office has really let down Luka. And I'll tell you the ways that I think they've let him down. So their whole, I guess, mindset has been throughout this time since Luka really emerged during pretty much the second half of his rookie season. Obviously, he won Rookie of the Year, so he was good the entire season. But once they got Harrison Barnes, DeAndre Jordan, Wes Matthews out of here, he took his game to another level. Then in your second year, you know, he makes another leap. You know, he averages 28, 9, and 9 for the most part. And you're thinking, wow, this dude's really, his ability to make guys around him better is really elite. And okay, we can just put anything around this guy. So coming into the 2021 season, the Dallas Mavericks were like, okay, we're going to get guys where they might not have the best basketball talent, but because they're playing with Luka, they'll play above their actual talent level, which is the complete wrong mindset if you ask me. Get some ballers in here. Get some guys that can take the pressure off of Luka instead of putting all the pressure on Luka to make everybody around him better. He's going to do that regardless. So that's the kind of the way I want to see them approach. Like, they'll have cap space this upcoming season. There's already been some names floated around of guys they could be interested in this upcoming offseason. Make sure you secure this talent around him, and make sure you give Luka the tools around him to feel that he has the tools necessary to win a championship. And obviously the third factor is something I've already touched on. They've had to deal with a lot of COVID situations about being out, and they were having to play games, you know, shorthanded, 5 role players, as versus some of these teams just were able to get the time off, and because they didn't have the 8 players to play that the NBA requires. So COVID, the front office, and then just KP not stepping up as that number 2 option have all factored into the Mavs only being 15-15. But now I want to go transition into a storyline that has come over the last week. And I was actually a guest on a post-game show, the Home Court Show on the Dallas Fanatic page this week. And I was asked, do I think the Mavs would entertain trading KP? And I said on that show that I do think everybody besides Luka is available in a trade for the Mavs if the Mavs can improve their team. So I went on and said that on the record, and then later that night it comes out and says that the Mavs are quietly gauging the interest that may be around, or see who may be interested in KP. And that was really interesting to me, because to me it's not breaking news, because like I said, everybody that's not named Luka on this roster can go if it makes the team better. But the timing of it was really interesting, because I mentioned earlier that KP has been vocal about the minutes he's playing, and he feels like he's not able to get into a rhythm, so on and so forth. But the team has been winning. And then you come off an 8-day break and KP is out due to back spasms. I don't know if I buy that KP was actually out due to back spasms. We'll see if he plays tonight against Philadelphia, because he is listed as questionable as it currently stands. But then I saw another report saying that Golden State could be interested, and the package around KP could, or the package that they would be willing to trade for KP, could involve the pick that they have from Minnesota, which Minnesota is the worst team in the league right now. James Wiseman, who was the second overall pick in this past year's draft, and then Andrew Wiggins, who was the #1 pick when he came out, and he's actually having a pretty good season in Golden State right now. And I look at that trade proposal, and I'm like, why the hell would Golden State do that? So I don't see that as realistic. And then a report came out yesterday stating that Washington is monitoring the situation because they want to pair KP with Beal and Westbrook to make him the third star there. And I'm look down Washington's roster. Of course, they have a big man, Thomas Bryant, but he's out for the season with I believe a torn ACL. So obviously you're not going to trade for him. And everything else on the roster is unproven young guys, or veteran guys on smaller deals, which you're not trading KP for that type of package. So obviously, best case scenario for me is be able to pair KP for a guy like Bradley Beal or a guy like Zach LaVine. I think those are now pipe dreams at this point with how well Zach LaVine has taken his game to the next level. And then obviously, if Washington is trying to build around Bradley Beal, they're not going to trade Bradley Beal in a KP package. So it's kind of hard to gauge on exactly what KP's value is. I don't know where this situation goes, but I do think there is more behind the scenes that has not come out yet. It seems like the Mavs have found themselves in this situation a lot now. We're going back to, Rondo. You go back to Dennis Smith Jr. when Luka came in, which Dennis Smith Jr. completely ruined his career when he, was pouting behind the scenes because Luka was kind of taking over that lead dog role. And obviously Luka's turned out to be an MVP candidate, while Dennis Smith Jr. is asking to be in the G League because he wasn't getting the playing time in New York before he was traded to Detroit. And even in Detroit now, he's getting outplayed by a rookie point guard. So we'll see kind of how his career continues, if it does continue. But yeah, going back to KP, I'm all for trading him. I know he's only 25 years old, but at this point he's proven to be unreliable, and I don't see that changing as a 7'3" guy who's had a history of injuries to this point. So that's all I had on that situation. That's going to be interesting. I could see a KP trade happening. Maybe not this year, but maybe during the offseason, depending on how he finishes out the season. But I do want to talk about the rest of the NBA as well. So I talked about the James Harden to Brooklyn trade when that trade went down. And before the season, I had Brooklyn making the finals out of the Eastern Conference. And based off what's happened and what's transpired to this point in the season, it looks like the Brooklyn Nets are just far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference. And not just the Eastern Conference, they look like they're right up there with the best team in the league with the Utah Jazz. We'll get to the Utah Jazz, as the season progresses, because I'm not fully sold on them making a deep playoff run and potentially winning a championship. But they are playing some outstanding basketball right now, so they could change my mind as the season goes on. So with all the weirdness that this NBA season's brought due to COVID, I want to go over, I think there's 5 teams right now in the NBA that have a legit chance to win a championship this season. Now, I want to put emphasis on, this is just my thoughts right now as things currently look. Obviously, in the second half of the season, things can change. But right now, number 1 of those 5 teams is the number 1 seed in the East as it currently stands, the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid has taken his game to another level, and he's thrown himself right in the MVP consideration. And if he's not the favorite, he's top 2 at this point in the season. Obviously, I talked about Brooklyn a little bit early in the season or earlier in the show. I think they are a legit title contender, and I would be surprised again if they don't come out of the East. I look at the Bucks. They've kind of struggled to this point in the season, but I mean they've been without Drew Holiday the last 6 or 7 games, so they haven't really put together a full body of work as far as their whole team healthy. And then that's it for the East. I don't see anybody in the East at this point that is going to contend with those top 3 there. And then when I go over to the Western Conference, I know Utah is the number 1 seed, but I need to see a little bit more. Obviously, I know they're shooting the ball incredibly right now. They're blowing everybody that they play out, but I'm not putting them in the championship conversation quite yet. So in the West, I have the Clippers. Obviously, we know what happened to them in the playoffs. We need to see it in the playoffs before you can really take them seriously. But Kawhi looks healthy. Paul George looks healthy. So that's going to be interesting to see how they come together. They're playing really hard under Tyronn Lue. And then you have the Lakers, the defending champs. They're going through a little slide right now. I'm not too concerned about that. They've lost 4 in a row at this point, but they also lost 4 in a row last year. And they've been without Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder, 2 important pieces to their team. So those are the 5 teams that I see right now that I can see winning a championship. And if you had to ask me to put a lot of money on it, I would bet on the Brooklyn Nets actually winning the championship, as much as I dislike it and don't want Harden to get it done. He's playing at an unbelievable level right now. But that's all I have for the NBA. We'll talk about them, talk about more about the NBA next week, including, kind of the All-Stars and how that's going to shake out. But now I want to transition over to the NFL and what's been going on over there. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, Carson Wentz was traded to Indy. Philadelphia is going to get back a 2 and a 3 with the ability for the 2 to escalate to a number 1 if Carson Wentz plays 70% of the snaps and goes to the playoffs. But I think you have to look at this as, at least the way I'm looking at this, I don't throw Indy right in the Super Bowl conversation. I've seen a lot of that talk. I don't think you can do that, and I don't think it's fair to do that, because it's been almost 4 years since we've seen Carson Wentz play really good football. And I know the head coach in Indy has a history with him, and he's played his best football when he was the quarterback coach / offensive coordinator. But until you see it, and to see he still has that in him and can stay healthy, I don't see the Colts as Super Bowl contenders quite yet. And especially when you look at Buffalo and Kansas City, those 2 teams are still far and away better than the Colts, I think. And then when you look at Philadelphia's perspective, whoa, how the mighty have fallen. You go from Wentz, MVP level quarterback in 2017, and then obviously Nick Foles comes in and finishes the job. And then you get a 3 for sure and a 2 with the potential to get to number 1. That is selling low. So I think Philadelphia, I'm not convinced that Philadelphia is going to stick with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback of the future. I think they could draft a quarterback at number 6 in the draft. We'll talk about that as the draft comes up. And then obviously the news with Russell Wilson in Seattle. He went on a whole tour within the last couple of weeks of saying how unhappy he is in Seattle. He doesn't feel he's getting the necessary help that he needs. He's tired of getting sacked, he said. And then you have the front office responding with, them being really upset about him going to the media and going through a public platform to do that. And then there was another report that came out in The Athletic saying that before a Thursday night game in Arizona, Russell Wilson stormed out of a meeting because his offensive ideas weren't being heard or being implemented. And then he had a conversation after Tom Brady won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, saying that, you know, what they had in mind for his offensive line and kind of what the direction of the team was going, and he wasn't happy with that. So that's a situation to monitor. And then you have Adam Schefter coming out saying that he hasn't demanded a trade yet, but if there is a trade, his agent said that he would be interested in going to the Dallas Cowboys, which is intriguing. We'll get to that more next week. The Raiders, which I guess that's the Las Vegas appeal. You have the Chicago Bears, which I guess is the defense, and because I mean they have Allen Robinson, who's a free agent, so they're definitely not upgrading the weapons if he goes to Chicago. And then last, you have the New Orleans Saints, which is really intriguing, although I'm not really sure how that works as far as the salary cap standpoint, because the Saints are so far over the salary cap or the projected salary cap that I don't see how that can work. So like I said, the quarterbacks right now are just insane right now. Of course, you have the Dak situation, where I'm sick of talking about this, but obviously it's in the news again just because the Cowboys have until March 9th to place the franchise tag on him once again for the second straight year. And to me, my opinion is the Cowboys are going to have to make a decision by draft night. And if you can't come to a deal with Dak Prescott, you have to consider trading him and finding a partner that he would be willing to go to. Because playing this out throughout the season, that's going to lead to an automatic divorce, and you're not going to get anything for him next season when he leaves in free agency. Before I get out of here, I do have to go over what we saw or what went viral at Cam Newton's camp this past week. Basically, what happened was, if you haven't seen it, Cam Newton was holding an annual camp that he does, I believe, in Georgia, and it was like a 7-on-7 tournament type setup. And basically the kid was trying to clown on Cam Newton, talking about, you know, basically he's washed, you're a free agent. And Cam Newton went back at him saying, you know, I'm rich. And so that blew up. The kid eventually issued an apology. But to me, and I think this is just as you grow up and grow older and you mature, I'm looking at the kid like, dude, what the hell are you doing? You're at a former NFL MVP's camp, a Heisman winner's camp, a guy that has been to the Super Bowl, played at an elite level, at the level that you're trying to get to, which you probably will never get to. We'll probably never hear from this kid again. And you have the nerve to go to his camp and be disrespectful? Of course, as a kid, you do a lot of stupid stuff. But if I'm the kid in that situation and I have dreams on and aspirations of going to the NFL, I'm not going to an NFL player's camp to be disrespectful and try to clown on him. I'm going there to try to get, you know, information on how I can get to this level. You know, what was it like coming into this level? Because I know a lot of athletes, they talk about they didn't have that growing up. You know, they wish their parents could have taken them to some of the camp and wish some of the players would have been as open as some of these current athletes are. So I didn't like that at all. I'm glad that he issued an apology. But the kid has a lot of growing up to do, as we all do at that age. But I didn't like that. And I thought Cam Newton handled it as best as he could. The only thing that I kind of would pick at is saying I'm rich. And obviously he was caught off guard. So, you know, it's in the moment reaction. You know, I got money. You know, you're just a kid. But I would have liked to see him handle it, you know, maybe not say go to the rich, you know, card, you know, just, you know, try to talk to him. And then I think he eventually did level with him and saying, you know, okay, you know, actually, I'm not even going to spend my time with you. Let me talk to your dad. So I thought that was really big on Cam. But yeah, I just didn't like the way that went down. But, you know, kids will be kids. And, you know, we'll see if we ever hear from this kid again. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Mr. Douglass Sports Show. I will be back next week. We will dive into NBA talks, NFL rumors, just depending on what's going on there. But until next time, salute.